All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Thanks for everyone that's here today. All right, right on time. Okay, so this is from Traverse Journeys. So I just want to give you a little bit of background about Traverse. We focus on impact focused travel. We go around the world, all kinds of destinations, really with a focus on responsible travel, working with local vendors, really keeping income in those communities. We have a community partner for each of our trips that we do like a half day activity with. Small group around 8 to 12. So we really try and keep them so that you're getting to experience local culture in an intimate setting and have a cross cultural exchange experience. My background is really varied. I have a background in travel and tourism, as well as project management, event management. I've traveled all over the world and lived in Asia. My master's program, I focused my research on music for social change in Brazil. So that really brought a lot of the social impact elements of what I use today in Traverse. And I also speak Spanish fluently and have studied Portuguese and German, currently studying Arabic, which is really incredible and challenging. And I work in cultural consulting as well, cultural competency, and really try and bring that education into each Traverse trip. So you're really learning what the social drivers and the historical drivers are of behaviors and how we can interpret those better to really just have better experiences with each other and understand different perspectives because we live in a really incredible, diverse, large world. So today's presentation, of course, is about Machu Picchu and Cusco. And I'm going to talk through it kind of through the 9-day itinerary that we do for the Traverse trip. We offer hiking and non-hiking options for that. But of course, you can use this information however you want for your own travels, for your own information. This is just to give you some context for it. So just to start out, of course, we're visiting Peru. You can see where Lima is in relation to Cusco. Typically flights coming from the United States, they'll of course fly through Lima. You can bus from Lima, although it's quite a ride. It takes, I think, 8 or 10 hours and it's really windy. So typically people will take flights. Oftentimes you can get a cheaper flight round trip to Lima and then book a flight separately round trip to Cusco. LATAM and Avianca are two of the common airlines for that. So I would do your research if you're looking at booking your tickets between those. A lot of people too will also visit, you can see the Nazca lines, where the lines are. And then Puno on the bottom right near the Bolivian border, that's Lake Titicaca. That's another popular spot that oftentimes people will go before or after. So just for ideas for that. So, zooming in a little bit, this is what we call the Sacred Valley. Cusco is at the center of it, and I really encourage you to read up on Cusco and the history. From the ancient Incan Empire. It's really incredible government seats, and the Incan Empire actually ran from southern Ecuador all the way to northern Argentina. It had a huge reach, trail systems throughout the entire empire. So it's really incredible to read about Cusco and also about Machu Picchu as the pre-conquistador civilization that existed. And even today, you can see all of the influence in the architecture and just the Andean region. It's really, really incredible. So I've just circled a couple of other spots. Aguascalientes that you see is the jumping off point for Machu Picchu. It's basically at the base. Ollantaytambo is where we'll be staying a couple of nights, and it's also where the train runs in between Ollantaytambo and Aguascalientes when you're going to Machu Picchu for the day. And then some of the other spots are some of them very many options for ruins and historical sites and markets and towns that you can visit. So here's Cusco. You're at about 11,000 feet, and so it's definitely high elevation. If you are sensitive to that, you probably want to go visit your travel clinic before you visit to make sure that there is medication you can take. There are also things that you can do that are helpful, like cutting out or reducing caffeine intake before you go. That's helpful. Hydration, of course, is huge, so make sure you're hydrated. And then reducing alcohol when when you're there, especially when you first land. All those things will help you adjust. I mean, there's no magic tricks to it, but those are some of the ones. Of course, coca tea is ubiquitous all through town. It's like drinking green tea, and that's a ancient Andean remedy for it. And it really works. So here in Cusco, you can see this on the top right, that's the Plaza de Armas, which is kind of in the central part of Cusco. And you can also see just other parts of town. There are lots of steps and hills, but also flat parts of the town. And just in relation, so we're at like 11,000 feet in Cusco. Machu Picchu is actually lower, around 8,000 feet. So, times to go to Machu Picchu. June through August is the high season. So, of course, you're going to have the best weather during that time, but the most amount of tourists. So, just something to keep in mind. April, May, September, October are more of the shoulder seasons. So, you're more likely to get some rain, but not necessarily. You might end up with great weather. Because it's in the mountains, it can really change rapidly. You can have rain, and then you can have sun, and then you can have rain again. The nights might be in the like 30s to 40s, and the days could be 60s to 70s. So it really can vary quite a bit. And they have a lot of microclimates. December through April is the official rainy season with the heaviest rains in January and February. And they actually close the trail for a month every year and then do repairs because they get mudslides from the rains and have to do maintenance on the trail. So around town, there are so many different neighborhoods that you can stay in, super cute places to stay. So here's an example of one of the boutique hotels that we stay in, and this is like a 3-star. But you can stay in Airbnb places, you can stay in hostels, you could stay in really swanky 5-star hotel. Lots of options. The prices will kind of reflect where you're staying. And then as far as when to plan, this is really kind of the important part. If you're planning to do the 4-day Inca trail hike, they limit the passes to 500 total per day, and only 200 of those are for tourists. And this is a combination of keeping the trail in good maintenance, but also so that it's not too crowded, which it really isn't. And those you need to get at least 8 months in advance. Just as an example, our September trip sold out in February, those tickets did. For the day trip to Machu Picchu, if you're just planning to go for the day, then 4 or 5, 6 months is okay. They have many more, 3,500 daily tickets to go to the entrance. The key thing for both of these is your tickets, either for the 4-day Inca trail hike or your day pass to Machu Picchu. They're connected to your passport. So the Peruvian government controls how these are sold. You can't just go buy a bulk amount of tickets. You need to actually you need to actually work through a local operator, and those tickets are connected to your passport. So the passport you have now must be exactly what you show when you enter, whenever you're going 8 months from now. So that's super, super important. Plan ahead. Make sure your passport information is correct. So around town, so many things to do. There are museums. You can check out the markets. Here's quinoa being sold. There's fruit markets and vegetables. On the top right, you can see a traditional quinoa soup. There's some really incredible Andean foods that are just hearty and healthy, all kinds of potatoes and corn, root type vegetables. You can see the classic cuy on the bottom of your screen. That's guinea pig, and that's a traditional food that they eat. So there are also really great teas. There's a mint tea called munya. There's causa, which is a popular dish. So definitely something to explore. But because it's so, I mean, Cusco is fairly touristy, not in a bad way. It's just that a lot of people come through there. And the amenities that come with that are great, though, because there are incredible coffee shops with really excellent coffee. You can get pizza. There's Japanese and Chinese Peruvian fusion that's really good. You can get, eggs and bacon. I mean, the options are limitless. You can get kind of whatever you're feeling. And it's all fairly affordable. So the big question, if you're planning a trip, is if you want to hike or you don't want to hike. So just to give you kind of a breakdown of what they would look like. So if you're planning to hike the 4-day Inca Trail, which is what we offer within our 9-day itinerary, there are operators that do a 2-day hike that does exist. So you can do just one night of camping in 2 days. But for this purpose, I'm going to focus on the 4-day. So you camp for 3 nights, you hike 45 kilometers, and you reach that highest elevation of 13,776 feet. So it is very high, and it's intense. You'll see pictures. If you decide hiking isn't for you, but you still want to see Machu Picchu, during that time, there are so many other ruins and sites for you to see. There's a tourist ticket that takes you to all kinds of different sites within the Sacred Valley. For our itinerary, we also go to the Pisac Fortress and a market. We do a really fun Pachamama traditional farm lunch, and then there are hikes all within the Sacred Valley for an hour or two, or 3 or 4 or 6 hours. For our trip, we plan it so that the hikers go off and do their hike. The non-hiking, we do all kinds of explorations in the Sacred Valley, and then everyone comes together on Friday of the itinerary to meet at Machu Picchu. So here, this is in Ollantaytambo. So this is from the map, if you remember in the beginning. So this is kind of where the train leaves for Aguascalientes, and for us, for non-hiking, we spend the first few days in Cusco and then spend a few days in Ollantaytambo, which is a great jumping off point for different sites and ruins in the area. And it's also a super cute little town. Here's some of the sites like Salineras, which is on the right. These are thousands of salt flats. It's super incredible. The market at Pisac, there's all kinds of traditional textiles and artworks. You'll see all kinds of themes that are traditional Incan motifs. Here's the Pachamama Farm Lunch, which is a really cool way that they do a cookout. Our community partner that we work with in Ollantaytambo also does Quechua language preservation. So it's a really great opportunity to support the local community and really learn about the traditions that are being preserved. So if you are hiking, here's what I'm going to do is walk through the 3 main days of the hike up to Machu Picchu. So just to kind of start out with the hiking, so porters will carry all of the camping equipment like the tents, and they'll carry all the cooking equipment and the dining tent. These guys are just absolutely incredible. You can see they carry these huge loads. You're responsible for carrying your backpack with all of your clothing and sanitary and all those kind of supplies. You can opt to have a personal porter, so you can just carry a day bag. There's an extra cost to that, but those do exist, and you can even decide a few days ahead of time. You don't necessarily need to decide way ahead in some circumstances because they are limited. So something to think about. On the left, you can see kind of an example of a bathroom site. It's pretty rustic, so you want to be prepared, have lots of wipes, and just know it's like camping. It's just squat toilets, and you're just out in nature. So it's really, really fun. It's the real deal. So the first day when you're hiking, the first thing that you do is you actually enter, because it's a national park, so you actually enter with your passport. So it is huge. You have to have your passport, and like I said in the beginning, they will check it, and it has to match what you registered with. So that's gets you onto the trail. And you'll do about 12 kilometers, which probably takes about 5 hours. There's a really incredible viewpoint, this part of the trail. It's really dry and sunny and arid. So sunscreen, bug spray, they've got these sandflies that create very itchy bites, and hats. You're responsible for carrying just the water that you need from kind of point to point every couple hours, but we on our trip actually provide water throughout for you to fill up your water bottles. Some operators don't provide it until maybe the last day when they offer boiled water, but there are little villages, and I mean tiny, tiny little villages, that they'll have little snack and water spots. So there are points at which you can buy water also. You just need to carry the amount of water you need from stop to stop. And then the second day, it's a fairly long day, and it's when you hit the peak, that 13,000 peak. You really feel it step by step because you're going up all of these old stone steps. It's really a beautiful landscape because you're starting to get into the cloud forest. Each day, the exact mileage or kilometers in hours is going to depend kind of on the pace of your group. The guides are really good um, at kind of monitoring the group speed so that some can go a little bit faster if they want to, some can hang back, nobody gets left behind. Most of the trail, there isn't really any confusion on where to go. There aren't any strange turns. So you'll have different stopping points to where it's obvious where to stop. So if you want to blaze ahead, you can. If you need to go slower and hang back, that's a possibility also. You can see on the bottom right what the dining tent looks like. So this is for you. They've set it up. They have a tea time. Typically, you'll arrive at camp in the early afternoon because it gets dark around 5:30. So you'll have kind of tea and some snacks when you first get there, and then dinner. Typically, it's dark by then, and then early to bed, like around 8. And then on the third day, you can see how the landscape really changes. So you're in the cloud forest. It's really, really beautiful. You'll probably see some llamas, and you'll see different ruins. Might get rained on, so want to be prepared for that. There are several different sites. You still hit some elevation, but not as much. There's more kind of flat and rolling hills. And then the fourth day, and then the day that for our itineraries where we meet back up with the non-hiking group, the hiking, if you're hiking the Inca Trail, you'll be up super early, probably like 3:30. Everyone queues up to go through the sun gate, and then you actually hike down. It takes a couple hours, and then that's where you see kind of that classic vista of Machu Picchu that's really popular. If you're in non-hiking, you'll take the first train from Ollantaytambo and to Aguascalientes early in the morning, like 6 o'clock train, and then it's a bus like 15 minutes up to the site. And then you can enter and you can actually hike up to that same spot to get those really great classic videos. And then everybody meets up together, and the local guide will walk you through the site. It's really, really fascinating having the local guide there because he's the one that tells you exactly what the different stonework means, what the different sites were used for, because some is ceremonial, could be agricultural, all of them have different uses. So that's a really cool thing to do. A lot of people talk about Huayna Picchu, which is the peak that you see across the way when you take that classic photo. You can hike it, but you do have to get tickets ahead of time, and there's a hike you can hike it at 7 a.m. and at 10 a.m., and they limit each of those to 200 people. So you do have to book that ahead of time. And it also can interfere, at least with the way that we're doing our itinerary, it can interfere with it can interfere with being able to see everything with a local guide. So when you get to, after the hike, when you get down, you'll go to Aguascalientes, and you'll have some time in the afternoon, depending on what you decide to do. If you travel with us, we'll be staying in Ollantaytambo. If you go with just an operator that does the Inca Trail hike, they'll usually send you back to Cusco at the end of the night, which makes for a little bit of quite a long day, because you take the train to Ollantaytambo and then you take a bus or other kind of vehicle another couple hours back into Cusco. And either way, recommendations, if you're doing this on your own, maybe consider staying in Aguascalientes or Ollantaytambo, just because you'll be probably exhausted. Aguascalientes is very much like a backpacker town. There's all kinds of food, there's markets. It's a cool little spot. So the way we plan our itinerary is that after the Machu Picchu day, which on ours is on a Friday, we spend the night in Ollantaytambo, and then Saturday we go back to Cusco. And we planned it that way before departure on Sunday because, especially if you hiked, you're exhausted. It was amazing, but you're exhausted and you kind of just want to rest. Plus, there's so much to see in Cusco itself. So there's museums. You've got the 12 Corner Stone, which is, I think, was in one of the previous, or actually it's in this slide right here. Really famous because there is not any kind of mortar in these stones. There's a site called Sacsayhuaman that you can go up to, and of course have some pisco sours. So many, many options in Cusco for you to go visit. So a few helpful resources. So they use the Sol in Peru, and it's kind of a fixed rate, like they'll trade them 3 to 1. When you're in town, if you're buying small things, it's better to use soles, but they'll accept dollars also. But if you're buying something big, it's actually can be more useful. Like if you're paying $100 or $200 uh, for for something, paying in US dollar cash can be helpful just because you're not carrying as many bills because you have the 3 time rate. The CDC website, you'll want to check, of course, and make sure you're up to date on all the immunizations that you need for this area. You don't need malaria. The altitude sickness is helpful. Travel.state.gov has all of your information on passport and visa requirements. It's a free visa if you're a US citizen when you upon arrival in Peru, and you just want to make sure you have enough passport validity. If you haven't heard of it, there's a government program called STEP, and you can register just that you'll be gone, and that's really useful. Just so that the US Embassy knows where you are, and should there be any kind of economic or political or environmental events, that you're on a registry, that it's known that you're in Peru. And you can also receive helpful updates from the site if you enroll. Sometimes this happens in Latin America a lot. For example, there might be like a strike, and so they'll tell you avoid downtown or avoid the capital area, and so you'll get these government notifications that can actually be really helpful. This link, and everyone who's attending, I'll send a link to this full webinar, and I can also send this slide, but I have a packing list for Machu Picchu, so all the kind of itemized things that you want to bring. And then also, I am a big fan of having natural remedies when you're traveling. There are so many that you can have, but like probiotics, for example, all kinds of immune boosters. So I have a whole list for that. So that takes us to a few just wrap-up items. If you are interested in joining us, which we would love to have you along, please check out the trip that we have. Even if not, you can just check out the itinerary for ideas for your own planning. For September 2018, we only have the non-hiking spots right now because the hiking is totally sold out, but we're pre-booking for May and September 2019. We do have a $200 off special, so if you do book via this, make sure and note that code, and we'd love to give that to you. So, all right. Those spots for this is a question that came up, but those spots for the hiking sold out in February. So just to give you an idea of that 8 months or more really is important. All right, so taking some questions.